آخرین نبرده پهلوی برمیگرده این 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 آخرین نبرده پهلوی برمیگرده.
We're taking a deep dive into the complex and rapidly evolving situation in Iran today, looking at what's happening on the ground, how the world is reacting, and what it all means for the future. Over the past several weeks, Iran has been a focal point of global attention due to significant public unrest. What started as localized demonstrations has persisted, spreading to various cities and regions across the country. These gatherings reflect a complex mix of deep-seated political, economic, and social grievances. People from different walks of life have taken to the streets, a clear sign that the issues at hand resonate broadly within the population. However, getting a clear and complete picture of these events is incredibly challenging. The Iranian government has implemented significant communication restrictions, most notably on internet access. This digital blackout makes it extremely difficult for information to flow freely, both within Iran and to the outside world. Journalists, human rights organizations, and even citizens trying to connect with family are struggling. Consequently, much of the information we receive comes in fragmented pieces, short video clips, unverified social media posts, and anecdotal accounts. While these snippets offer a glimpse into the situation, they don't provide the full context, and independent verification is often impossible. Imagine trying to assemble a puzzle with most of the pieces missing. That's what it's like for observers trying to understand the full scale of what's happening. In a small yet notable adjustment, authorities have reportedly allowed some international phone connectivity to be restored. This move, however, seems selective and doesn't fundamentally change the broader landscape of restricted communication. Essential services like mobile, data, and popular social media platforms remain largely blocked or heavily throttled for the majority of the population. This control over information is a powerful tool, allowing the government to shape the narrative internally and limit the exposure of the protests globally. In contrast to the scenes of unrest circulating online, the official narrative presented by Iranian state media paints a very different picture. The government has organized and promoted large-scale public events and rallies to demonstrate support for the current leadership in the system. These events are heavily publicized, featuring speeches from high-ranking officials who often attribute the unrest to external enemies and foreign interference. This is a long-standing tactic aimed at unifying their supporters and delegitimizing the protesters by framing them as pawns in a larger geopolitical game. State-run television channels broadcast images of stability and normalcy, emphasizing national unity and resilience against outside pressures. Yet, this official story is constantly challenged by the flood of independent footage that, despite the restrictions, manages to find its way online. These videos often show significant public gatherings, clashes between protesters and security forces, and a heavy security presence in major cities. The discrepancy between the state-sanctioned narrative and the raw, user-generated content creates two parallel realities, leaving it up to the viewer to decide which is more credible. This information battle is a key front in the ongoing struggle, highlighting the critical role that digital media now plays in modern social and political movements. Now, let's shift our focus to the international stage, because what happens in Iran doesn't happen in a vacuum. The world is watching, and different countries are responding in different ways. The United States has been particularly vocal. The White House recently announced new economic policy measures related to Iran. While the specific details of these measures are still being analyzed, they represent a tangible response to the ongoing situation. U.S. officials have been clear that they are reviewing their entire approach to Iran. This involves a delicate balancing act. On one hand, they are maintaining firm public messaging, condemning the crackdown on protesters, and voicing support for the Iranian people. On the other hand, they continue to emphasize that diplomatic engagement remains a priority. This dual approach suggests that Washington is trying to apply pressure without completely closing the door on future negotiations, particularly on issues like the nuclear program. The situation is fluid, and American policy is likely to evolve as events on the ground in Iran develop. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, European governments are finding themselves in a difficult position. Many have described the situation as highly uncertain, and their official statements often reflect a sense of caution. A recurring theme in their responses is the difficulty of obtaining reliable, verified information. With limited diplomatic presence on the ground and the communications blackout, European leaders are hesitant to make definitive statements or take drastic actions. They are largely calling for de-escalation and respect for human rights, but they are also mindful of the delicate geopolitical balance in the region. Their reactions are more measured compared to the U.S., reflecting a desire to keep channels of communication open with Tehran while also signaling their concern. This cautious approach highlights the broader challenge for the international community: how to respond effectively when access to information is so heavily controlled. The conflict in Ukraine has also unexpectedly intersected with the events in Iran. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has publicly commented on the developments. His remarks place the situation in Iran within the broader context of international relations and the global struggle between autocratic and democratic systems. For Ukraine, any instability in a country that has complex relationships with Russia is of strategic interest. Zelensky's comments serve as a reminder that major global events are often interconnected, and a crisis in one part of the world can have ripple effects thousands of miles away. Closer to Iran, the regional context is, as always, critically important. Israel, a key regional rival, has made it clear that it is closely monitoring the developments. Israeli officials have been very careful with their public statements, generally framing the situation as an internal matter for Iran. This is a strategic choice. By avoiding direct and inflammatory comments, Israel avoids giving the Iranian government a convenient excuse to rally support by pointing to foreign interference from its primary adversary. However, behind the scenes, you can be sure that Israeli intelligence and military planners are analyzing every piece of information, assessing the potential impact on regional security and on Iran's nuclear program. For Israel, the stability or instability of the Iranian regime is a matter of paramount national security. In response, Iranian officials have been quick to reiterate their long-standing position against any form of foreign involvement in their domestic affairs. They have specifically warned regional adversaries against trying to exploit the situation. This exchange of statements, while predictable, underscores the tense and volatile nature of the Middle East. Every internal development is viewed through a lens of regional power dynamics and rivalries. The ongoing unrest in Iran adds another layer of complexity and uncertainty to an already combustible region. What happens next inside Iran could have significant consequences for the balance of power across the Middle East. So, with all this happening, what are the key things that analysts and observers are watching most closely? First and foremost is the flow of information. The communication restrictions are not just a logistical problem. They are a central feature of this crisis. How events are understood, both inside and outside Iran, is being shaped by who controls the narrative. Analysts are watching for any changes in these restrictions. Will the internet be fully restored? Or will the blackout continue, forcing people to rely on precarious and fragmented sources? The answers to these questions will determine our ability to accurately gauge the scale and direction of the movement. The struggle for information is a struggle for the truth of what is happening on the ground. Another key area of focus is diplomatic pressure. We are seeing a gradual but noticeable shift in how some governments are engaging with Tehran. The new policy measures from the U.S. and the cautious but concerned statements from Europe signal growing international attention. Analysts are watching to see if this diplomatic pressure will escalate. Will more countries impose sanctions? Will there be actions taken at the United Nations? Or will the diplomatic engagement remain largely rhetorical? The level of international pressure could influence the choices made by the Iranian government. Although historically, the leadership in Tehran has shown a great deal of resilience in the face of external pressure. This time, however, the combination of internal and external pressures might create a different dynamic. Finally, everyone is looking at the broader implications. It's clear that these internal developments in Iran could have significant regional and even global significance. The outcome is far from certain, and how these events evolve will be critical. If the government succeeds in completely suppressing the unrest, it might emerge more consolidated, at least in the short term. If the protests continue and evolve, it could lead to significant changes within Iran's political structure. The impact on the global energy market, regional security alignments, and international diplomatic efforts, especially concerning the nuclear issue, could be profound. Analysts are running various scenarios, but the reality is that we are in uncharted territory. The situation is a reminder that the world is interconnected, and the aspirations and struggles of people in one country can resonate far beyond its borders. The coming weeks will be crucial. We'll be keeping a close eye on all these developments and will continue to bring you the most accurate, verified information we can. It's a complex story with many moving parts, and understanding it requires looking beyond the headlines. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Don't forget to share, and subscribe for more in-depth analysis on the stories that matter. We'll see you next time.